Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grim Flayer. I hope you're doing very well today. Welcome to another spoiler video. This one is for a card called Portable Hole. Now, maybe keep it clean in the comments, right? Many very easy jokes to be made over this. Or don't. Do as you see fit. Exercise your best judgment. If you have some good jokes, maybe you can just let them rip, right? Anyway, Portable Hole, to be clear, was revealed alongside some MH2 spoilers, but it is not an MH2 card. It is an early reveal from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, the D&D themed set, but the point here is it will be modern legal, and I think it's strong enough to see at least some amount of modern play, so our job here is to determine, is it dead? AKA, will it see play potentially in Deadguy Ale, aka black-white midrange, or the BWX variants like Abzan and Mardu. So thank you very much for watching. Let's dive right into some analysis and figure out what to do with Portable Hole. Portable Hole is a 1-drop white artifact which reads, when Portable Hole enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until Portable Hole leaves the battlefield. So the first thing to realize is this is a 1-drop interaction that does not have an immediate downside, unlike the obvious comparison of Path to Exile, or indeed you can even compare it to Thoughtseize with a drawback of lose 2 life, and then if you start getting a little bit higher curve, we've got the drawback of using an early Assassin's Trophy for removal. The list goes on. So the fact that this is wide-ranging in terms of the types that it can hit, the fact that it is not exceedingly narrow in terms of the mana value, maybe comparing this to like Blood Chief's Thirst or an Unrevolted Fatal Push or something like that, it's not terribly narrow, and there's no immediate downside. The reason I preface that with immediate is if the opponent can interact with artifacts, then they have kind of broken free from your removal. It can be a temporary answer under those circumstances, but there are upsides to that as well. We'll get into those a little bit later, but the first thing I'd like to do is to compare this to similar cards. So we have On Thin Ice. This is probably the best similar card that exists in Modern, and it doesn't see that much play. And frankly, it can be a little bit hard for black-based mid-range decks to accommodate this card. That's why we usually don't play it. We're having to play snow-covered plains on turn 1 in order to have this be turn 1 removal, and that can just kind of gum up our entire progression. Obvious tension between that and deploying black lands in general for maybe double black on turn 3 or even double black on turn 2. Even if we wanted to On Thin Ice a Mana Dork on turn 1, maybe turn 2 we want to double discard or discard and Fatal Push or something. There's a lot of tension there with On Thin Ice. It's probably just not worth accommodating. Isolate is a card that also came to mind. It sees fringe modern play, and it is a harder answer than the other two because it's an instant. Once it resolves, it's done. And it's an exile effect, which is really nice, right? A lot of the white effects are, and that's something that black should always be intrigued by because the black-based removal and discard are obviously not exiling anything. Isolate's big problem is that it is extremely narrow. It has to be exactly converted mana cost 1, the target, where if we go back to Portable Hole, we're not only hitting those mana value 1 cards or CMC 1 cards, it's also going up to 2, and indeed it's also going down to things with CMC 0. All of this is very relevant, especially going up to 2 in terms of making this better than Isolate. And then Glass Casket, kind of similar energy to these types of cards, doesn't see as much play in Modern as even the other two, probably just because it costs a little bit more, but also restricted to creatures as well. So if you look at this type of effect, again, those cards not exactly setting Modern on fire or anything, right? But they are comparable to Portable Hole. They do all at least see a bit of play here and there. I think Portable Hole is the big winner from among that collection of cards. But you know what Portable Hole reminds me even more of than those is Abrupt Decay. Same energy here, where Decay is a very flexible answer gated only by its ability to hit things on the higher end of the mana curve, right? And we play Abrupt Decay for a very good reason in BGX. It is far from strictly worse than Assassin's Trophy, despite Trophy being able to hit things at the top end and Trophy being able to hit lands and everything in between. The downside of Trophy is still so relevant relevant that often Abrupt Decay is played alongside it or even over it in a lot of BGX decks. I assert that Portable Hole is something that you could play maybe instead of Abrupt Decay if you simply don't have green, but you want that type of effect if you're in a Deadguy, Ill, or Mardu list. You could also play it alongside Abrupt Decay if you're pretty certain that you don't want Trophy in an optimized main deck. This allows you to have a plethora of relatively hard answers. Again, Hole with the caveat that if they can shatter it, the, once removed card is live again, but you understand the point here, right? Being able to interact on turn 1, very, very relevant. Going turn 1 Hole into turn 2 Decay means if your opponent is playing to the board in any way, shape, or form, you are interacting. And again, if Decay's not available to you because you're not in green, maybe this is an effect that you're interested in anyway. So what types of cards can Portable Hole hit in Modern? Well, for one thing, it does a pretty darn good Fatal Push or a Bloodchief's Thirst impression, right? And let's not really just skate past that. Let's actually let that sink in for a moment, because that's actually highly relevant to all of our interest on BGX midrange, or Black-White X midrange, I guess is what we're talking here. We've seen Meon Rock in the past, for example, reach for Deathmark, because this is a great way to have a 5th Fatal Push style effect when it lines up. We've seen the benefits of being in Jund, where you have maybe 6 1-mana removal spells between your pushes and your bolts. Portable Hole can get your critical mass of 1-drop removals killing the dorks really, really high, while also not being dead against decks that do not play creatures, right? So for the non-creature targets, let's look at some of them that are pretty common in the meta right now. Utopia Sprawl, obviously, this is huge, right? Heliod plays it, and Ponza plays it. In both of those decks, if you cannot deal with a Sprawl early with turn 1 discard, you are in big trouble. And if you're on the draw, you can't even take it. Also, Abrupt Decay, on the play, great target for Decay's Utopia Sprawl. On the draw, not really doing anything besides crossing your fingers and hoping they don't pillage you or Blood Moon you out of being able to Decay on turn 2, but turn 1 Portable Hole, very clean answer on the draw to that type of thing. And then Ren and 6, obviously Ren and 6 is likely to bury any opposing mid-range deck if left unchecked. Portable Hole is a great flexible answer to Ren. We have Ether Vial, a card that waxes and wanes a bit in the meta, maybe not quite as common as it used to be, but often there is a tension between, do we take Ether Vial to really slow them down, or do we take the unbeatable card in their hand, or the card that could potentially become unbeatable under the wrong circumstances? You think of like a Drogskull Captain or Rattle Chains, these types of cards out of Spirits. You think of a card like even Militia Bugler in Humans that does some kind of a 2-for-1. You think of Merfolk Trickster that can blow out your Tarmogoyfs, your Scourge of the Skyclaves against a Merfolk deck. Well, with Portable Hole, maybe you can have your cake and eat it too. Maybe you can turn 1 discard, take away their biggest threat, and then you've got Portable Hole in the back pocket to take care of their turn 1 Ether Vial, definitely not to be underestimated. And then, of course, if you're on the play against Tron, you can hit those Expedition maps. Excuse me, if you're on the draw against Tron, that's important. You can hit those maps, you can hit those Spheres and Stars and anything else they play on turn 1, even their relics. Again, big difference when you're leaning on Abrupt Decay for that role between being on the play, where you can really 1-for-1 them profitably, and being on the draw where you just have to cross your fingers and hope. But the fact that Portable Hole is only CMC 1 really makes it stock rise under these circumstances. Let's go back to that downside of Portable Hole, namely that it is not potentially always a permanent answer simply because you are leaving it on the battlefield to potentially be shattered and therefore unlocking the opponent's piece. Now, maybe this is about a wash, right? Because the fact that you're not putting something in their graveyard, that you have a 1-drop exile effect with no immediate downside in the context of a black-based shell that rarely has access to anything remotely like that. Ultimately, I'll probably say I'll take my chances with this, but there are cards like a Braid and Kolaghan's Command that can come in. Now, it all depends on your deck, right? So if you're on Deadguy and you're maybe packing Tide Hollow Scullers, you are opening yourself up even more to artifact hate. And if you're on Stoneforge Mystic, that's also true, right? This is one of the reasons I actually think Portable Hole might boost Blacklist strategies more than our strategies directly because they're just a little bit less risk and maybe a little bit more of a need for this type of effect if they don't have access to discard, abrupt decay, etc. in the first place. And you're looking at cards like Abrade and Kolaghan's Command that broadly are already pretty good against mid-range, and then if we give them more additional targets in Portable Hole, not only will it make those cards higher ceiling and more live, they could also represent some nasty combat tricks. So that's definitely a bit of a downside, but you know what? The fact that this is an artifact, it has its own upsides too. So for one thing, if you're on Abzan, of course, and you lose your Portable Hole, might not be ideal, but at the end of the day, if the opponent's only trading 1-for-1 with you in a different type of way, that's probably okay. It can grow the Tarmogoyf too. It can grow Grimflayer if you're playing My Namesake as well. Perhaps more importantly than any of that, though, Lurrus of the Dream Den can buy it back, and that's actually really clutch to have such universally applicable removal being able to be bought at that low CMC slot back by Lurrus. And of course, I've been talking about all kinds of different shells here. Your mileage will vary as to what exactly you are playing and what you're considering this for, but the fact that this is pretty hard removal that can be bought back by Lurrus, it's kind of like the prospect of looping Seal of Fire, except this can handle a vast majority of cards that Seal could never even consider touching. So definitely something worth mentioning there, a potentially pretty significant upside in the correct shell. At the end of the day, however, guys, I'm getting kind of Skyclave Apparition style vibes from Portable Hole. Now, I'm not asserting that Portable Hole will be as powerful or as ubiquitous as Skyclave Apparition currently is, but what I am saying, and what I did say about Apparition at the time it came out, is that this card is playable in black-based midrange. It's playable in Abzan if you can accommodate double white especially, and it's definitely playable in Deadguy Ale. However, that being said, I did think, and I think this has been proven over time, that Skyclave Apparition would power up Blacklist strategies more. If you look at the fact that it boosts spirits, that it boosts these green-white value decks like Heliod, they never had access to hard answers before like this without major downsides in their colors, and especially if it's a collected company deck like the aforementioned Heliod, the fact that you can find it off of Coco, very, very nice. And I think something similar is going to apply here to Portable Hole in that it is interesting in several different ways. Again, that synergy with Lurrus, the fact that it is good depletion, even though it's not perfect depletion because it has no downside and it's very flexible at a low cost, and also the fact that it can be bought back with Lurrus. These are all really important upsides. Those are probably the three major ones. But at the end of the day, I do still expect that the decks that did not already have access to Abrupt Decay, to discard effects, to just such a wide swath of removal of any kind, right? Those are the ones that stand to benefit the most from Portable Hole. And that's without even getting into the Artifacts Matter decks, where you could really start seeing this card take off, because these low-cost artifacts with powerful effects, they are always dual purpose in the right shell, because not only can they do the thing they're designed to do in a vacuum, they can also fuel whatever the Artifacts Matter angle is, whether it be Urza, Emery, anything along those lines. You guys know the drill, and you know how all that can come together. The last kind of batch of thoughts I'll leave you with, my friends, is that Portable Hole is likely to become more powerful as the format gets more powerful, because I hope and pray that the age of higher curve, can't fail, draw a million cards, game-winning threats is kind of over, and if we trend more toward legacy, or even, dare I say, vintage style cards, in that they're hyper powerful but they do have a fail rate. Often these things will be at lower curves and maybe will be unusual types as well. Not expecting huge strides in that direction, you understand, but we could see, the point is, Modern Horizons 2 is right around the corner. We could see some designs that are maybe a little more legacy-esque, or indeed ports directly from Legacy that Portable Hole could be a very good answer to, and also Portable Hole might have a little mini snowball effect, like a self-replicating effect, in that Portable Hole if it's good against a lot of stuff, it also answers opposing portable holes. You could see the card itself, its very existence in the format, incentivizing other people to play it a little bit more. We also have to consider all the different ways this could fit into like War of Invention decks or Karn the Great Creator decks as a tutorable answer. So between all of those different incentives, speculative and currently in existence and everything in between, I just think we should remember the card exists. I think we should maybe consider giving it a spin in black-based mid-range, depending on your exact shell and your exact needs. So thank you so much, my friends, for watching. Of course, I'm eager to know what you think about this unfortunately named but potentially very interestingly designed card. We're going to have it, I guess, waiting in the wings for us, and we'll again see what happens with MH2 spoilers, which you can catch right here on the channel. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.